Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome back to Canard Boulevard. Today, we're going to be looking at what I did and what I saw at Oshkosh 2025. Coming up. The first video in this series, which I will put a link to up here, I covered the flight out of my home airport into DeKalb. Not DeKalb, DeKalb. I got a lot of comments about that. DeKalb, Illinois, where I fueled up, and then I flew into Oshkosh and landed after I did the whole Fisk arrival, which was exciting. First time ever actually flying my own airplane into there on my own. So that was the first video. We're going to pick up from where we left off there. I did go there early. I got there on Friday to beat the rush and the traffic and to make sure that I got a decent camping spot. So I set up camp and I didn't do a whole lot, kind of like walked around a little bit. Saturday is the first day where I had time to go look around. I didn't want to go on the grounds yet, and they were actually specifically said do not go into the main exhibit grounds. So I decided I'm going to leave that until we actually open. Instead, I'll go to the museum. I'd never actually been to the EAA Museum before. I was very impressed. I spent several hours there. They had a replica of the Spirit of St. Louis. Of course, the original is hanging in the Smithsonian, but this was a pretty good replica. And they also had an extremely accurate replica of the Rutan Voyager. Of course, the original, again, is hanging in the Smithsonian, but this was amazing at how accurate and how much detail they went into recreating this thing. There's quite a bit of Rutan there, and of course, Mike Pady's Turbulence, which was the fastest single-engine turboprop airplane ever made. I saw a Bugatti with a twin-engine, counter-rotating prop engines in the back. There was the very first Cirrus. I've seen one of those before. They had Spaceship One there, and a very vegan. So lots and lots of Rutan at the museum. I decided to go take a picture in front of the arch while there weren't a whole lot of people there. Went ahead a look at the AOPA 182 that they're giving away. In fact, they gave it away during Oshkosh this year. And then I had a look at the new RV-15, the high wing RV. Went back to the Homebuilt Camping area and saw that they had dropped off some chairs that were grown, harvested, and built by an EAA chapter. And these are just beautiful chairs.
Day 2.
Sunday was the day when everybody arrives. So many arrivals coming in there. So I went and spent the better part of the day sitting by the yellow dot and just watching airplanes land. I'd live streamed quite a bit of this, so I had quite a few people on YouTube watching my live stream coming in. As I was sitting there, got to see this beautiful Cessna 126 taxiing past. I had quite a few people on the live stream comment that they thought this was the most beautiful airplane they ever saw. Well, it certainly takes a lot of polishing. And then something happened that nobody expected. A 767 landed. And this was not just any 767. This was a private jet. No markings on it whatsoever. No ADS-B information. Nobody knew who this was. This airplane came in and stayed for probably, I think, 3 or 4 days, just attending Oshkosh, just like any other aviator, and then they took off. And there was all kinds of rumors all swirling around Oshkosh as to what celebrity it was that was in their private 767. We did have a couple lake amphibians that attempted this landing at the seaplane base with not a lot of success. And after they actually went around, they went and did a straight-in landing on 36 left, and for their efforts got a number to call rather publicly over the PA, which was playing the tower frequency, unfortunately for these two pilots. That wasn't the only event that went on. This 172, I'm sure you've heard the ATC recordings. This poor guy was just confused, had no business trying to fly into Oshkosh, did not read the NOTAM, was just turned around, had no spatial awareness. He was absolutely lost. The controllers kept telling them to go somewhere else, but he refused. He wanted to go into Oshkosh. They ended up shutting down all arrivals just to get this guy into the airport, and he really should not have been there. In fact, he probably should not be flying any airplane at all, unfortunately. And it gets worse. 2 days later, he took off on the wrong direction on a taxiway. You can see people running and jumping out of the way, and that airplane zooming off into the grass because he saw this oncoming airplane. And then, to make things worse, he flew directly into a thunderstorm, but he did make it home safely. Hopefully, he is not going to be flying anymore. So after a day of watching airplanes, I went back to the campsite and found that many, many Canards had come since I was out, and they'd all set up camp.
Day 3. Good morning. Airplane noise. Woken up by yodeling at 7 a.m. Time to face the day. Here comes Oshkosh.
So after being woken up by the traditional yodeling, and then raise yourself out of bed and head for the surprisingly clean and nice modern showers.
Then head for the bathrooms, which are air conditioned and really nice inside. Full sinks, flush toilets. This is no porta potty. Very important, hat and sunscreen. Without these two, you will have a miserable time at Oshkosh. Well, at least the next day will be pretty miserable.
Then put your towels on your Canards to dry. We don't put them on our props. We have quite a few airplanes in Homebuilt Camping by now.
I'm gonna walk over to the pavilion, get some free coffee, fill up my water. And they're still arriving. Trying to taxi through the grass. And endless circling Bell 47s up above. I'm pretty sure they give rides to people all day long. These guys just circling around over and over and over. There's another one over here. Alright, packed up for the day, got all my drinks and all my supplies in my backpack, got my sunscreen, got my sunglasses, my hat, and we start to trek into the center of the show. It's about a mile walk. I'm going to go up to the main flight line and then turn south and go until we get to all the exhibits and all the core of what Oshkosh is. This is all home-built camping. These are all the home-builts that come here and camp, and there are a lot of them, most of which are RVs. But there's a lot of us.
I walked into the main center, and you can see the Main Plaza has the Garmin booth, but all the largest airplanes, including a Pratt & Whitney 747 test bed aircraft, and of course the C-130 Herc. The U-2 arrived. I did post another video of its landing. You can see that link to that here. And of course the ever-present Goodyear Blimps, which flew overhead the entire week we were there non-stop. You got used to hearing them overhead. If you see airplanes flying in formation at home, it's something special to see. At Oshkosh, it happens all day long, many times a day. Also on the very first day, I went to a YouTuber meet and greet where I got to meet a lot of the people that watch this channel. It was really wonderful to meet everybody. And it was also very interesting to meet many of the aviation YouTubers who I have watched and talked to in the past, and to meet them in person for the first time. I met Kay Hall and her father, and they were both lovely. I met Hoover from Pilot Debrief, also a very nice and intelligent guy. I met Tret Palmer, who is just the most down-to-earth, humble, nicest guy you'd ever want to meet, just like he is on his videos. I met both Josh Flowers and Chelsea Smith from Aviation 101. In fact, I ended up talking to Chelsea for about 15 minutes, and she was just really nice, fascinating person. And I really enjoyed getting to talk after all the fans had left to all the different YouTubers to compare notes over how we do our channels. I took about 100 selfies with all the different people that came, and I just wanted to take a moment to say how much I appreciate all the people that came out to say hello, and you were just so friendly and nice. I really appreciated it. I also did meet up with Jimmy from Jimmy's World, and again, we talked YouTube for about 15 or 20 minutes. Again, a really nice, down-to-earth guy. I talked Grizzly there as well. It was the first day of Oshkosh, and I think he'd already had enough. That said, they did bring the Elvis jet up all the way from Florida. It made it there. No mechanical problems whatsoever, so I guess there is that. I then started going to visit some vendors, and the first one I went to was Abingdon Watches, founded by Abingdon Mullen, who I have known for over 10 years and yet never met. I finally got to meet her and have a look at her amazing watches. She is one incredible woman. She is an adventurer. She is an entrepreneur. Just an amazing person. On the Tuesday night, she had a party at her campsite in Camp Schaller, and I never met so many just incredible people, just smart and accomplished, and just, I had such a good time. If you are a woman and are looking for an aviator's watch, check out Abingdon Watches. I am going to go through the vendors fairly quickly, as fast as I can, because I saw a lot of vendors and I want to get information out about the ones that I saw that I thought were interesting. The very first one was Monkworkz, and Monkworkz was a vendor that didn't actually have a booth at the show. So how did I see Monkworkz? Well, because when I was walking through Homebuilt Camping, I bumped into Bill Judge, the owner of Monkworkz, and he had a Monkworkz hat and shirt on. He was actually on the way to the forums to go teach a class. And so I talked to him, and he remembered from when I talked to him about putting my Monkworkz alternator into my plane. And so we had a quick talk. Nice guy, and I wholly approve of the Monkworkz alternator. I've had it in the plane now for probably 50 hours of flight time, and it's working great now that I got the connectors all sorted. Velocity, I stopped at the Velocity booth. Now that kind of has a place for me in my heart, because the first time I went to Oshkosh was 1998, and I saw the Velocity there, and I'm like, this is the most amazing airplane ever, and it kind of set me on the path down Canards, and here we are today. I talked to Dwayne Swing, who is the CEO of Velocity. His son Scott is the president. And I actually talked to him for a little bit about the nature of the business and how things are going. He says Velocity does not make money right now. The way they're running, they do not make money. He's also talking about retiring soon because he's been in this for a long time. So he hinted, he didn't come out and say, but he hinted that Velocity might be up for sale. So that may or may not happen. UL Power, I stopped. Interestingly enough, the guys there were not the friendliest, and they kind of brushed me off, and I asked a few questions and they didn't really have much to say. Interestingly, just like 2 days before Oshkosh started, they put out a press release saying that Robert Helms, who is the UL guy, he's the distributor and support and everything for UL in the United States. If you have had any involvement in UL Power engines, you know Robert Helm because he is the guy. Well, out of nowhere, they said, well, he's no longer associated with UL Power, and here's our 2 new distributors. They said he's going on to focus on other projects, which is the language typically used when somebody gets fired. So Robert hasn't said anything at all. Not quite sure what the story is there, but something happened between Robert and UL Power, I suspect. Aeromomentum, I stopped and talked to Mark Kettering for probably a good half hour. He's a really nice guy, a really smart guy, an engineer who is behind the package that goes onto the automotive engines that he remarkets as Aeromomentum. So something odd going on with Aeromomentum. They were sharing their booth with Aero Transcendent. And if that sounds familiar, it's a Chinese company that came out, I think about a year ago, and they said, hey, look, we have designed this new airplane, and they put out this YouTube video at the Chinese factory, and they were taxiing it back and forth with water going overhead. And it was an Aero Canard. Aero Transcendent has bought the rights for the Aero Canard, which is basically a cozy, but they're not really making it yet. So why they were just taxiing this thing around saying, hey, look at this airplane we just designed. There's something odd there. They also had a lot of examples of some other aircraft that Aero Transcendent apparently is designing or building. It wasn't really clear who made these airplanes, who designed them, and where they're being manufactured. I don't know. It was a little bit confusing. And the Aeromomentum part of the booth was pretty limited. I think they had 2 or 3 engines there. They did not have the AM20T, which is the one I really wanted to see. That's their 230 to 300 horsepower engine. In fact, I don't think they've ever displayed that one. Aeromomentum I've always liked. I like Mark, and he's a smart guy. His engines, in terms of quality, I think are leaps and bounds beyond Viking, but Viking does better marketing, and oh well. Matco, I stopped in the Matco booth. Those are the brakes that I'm going to be putting on my cozy. So I talked to the very friendly guys in there who said, yeah, here's what we're looking at. Here's what you should need. And they said, give us a call. We will help you configure everything you need and get you a set of brakes that works really well in your cozy. So really friendly guys. I loved my experience there at Matco. So Bede had the Bede 4, and they had a frame of a Bede 4. They had a pretty much completed Surewings Bede 4, which I'll talk about in a second, and then they had a Bede 4J. Surewings is a company that bought the kit rights for the Bede 4C and started producing these kits, including a firewall forward that included a Viking engine, which pretty much means that I'm not interested. That airframe was designed around an IO360, and that's probably what it should have, but they seem to think that with a Viking in there and a airframe parachute, and air conditioning of all things, that this is a kit that somebody will want, and it probably is. It's a great, strong, fast to build airplane. I strongly considered a BD4 before I got my cozy, and the main reason I did not is because the tubular spar that goes inside the cabin, I can only lean forward about 4 inches and it contacts my forehead, and that's not going to work for me. Sling had gorgeous airplanes there.
Here we are in the Sling booth looking at this beautiful Sling TSI. This is just a fantastic airplane. It's very comparable in performance to the cozy, and just look at the panel in this thing. That's just beautiful. The cockpit itself is really nice.
The TSI is a beautiful airplane, and I would definitely consider one of those. Not in place of my cozy. It's pretty close in terms of performance to the cozy. It's still a kit airplane. It has a lot of modern accoutrements, so the interior is beautiful. So I think Sling is really, really going to go places. I mean, they already are, but they are just taking over. Swift Fuels, this is an interesting one. I spoke with Chris DaCosta, who is the CEO of Swift Fuels, and he talked to me for over half an hour. Really interesting guy, very forthcoming. So if you recall, Swift produced the 94UL unleaded avgas. It was 94 octane, and it was used in the UND training fleet, and they started having valve recession issues on their training fleet and discontinued using that fuel. Swift was able to actually replicate that valve recession issue with the 94UL. So they are now developing a 100R fuel, which is going to be released this year. It is a true 100 low lead replacement. It can be mixed and intermixed with 100 low lead. It cannot be intermixed with any other unleaded avgas, but it can mix with 100 low lead. In fact, you can just dump it in the 100 low lead tank at the airport and it'll just pump out. They have a new additive package that coats the valve seats the same way that lead does for the 100 low lead to provide lubrication and stop that valve seat recession issue that they had in the 94UL. They tested adding that same additive package into the 94UL and retested it, and it did solve the valve recession issue with the 94UL. 94UL will be going away. They will be going forward with 100R. The Swift fuels have ASTM certification, which of course the GAMI fuels do not. He did not mention GAMI by name when I talked to him. He just kept mentioning it as our competitors, but it was pretty clear he was talking about GAMI. He did say that there are definite advantages in the 100R over GAMI's G100UL. And the main one of those is that Swift fuel has no aromatic amines. And the aromatic amines are what are causing all the problems with the G100UL. Where you see the staining on the outside of airplanes where there's leaks, where you see it eating away the paint, where you see it's causing swelling of seals and O-rings and so on. All that stuff is the aromatic amines, which is what GAMI is using to raise the octane of their fuel. Swift is not using aromatic amines. They said it's like turpentine. He says if you take a styrofoam cup and you pour the GAMI fuel in there, it will just dissolve the cup. There will be nothing left, whereas the Swift fuel will not, because it doesn't have that harsh solvent that is the aromatic amines, and that's why he says their fuel is going to be the winner in terms of the unleaded avgas war. The way that they are making that available is through a $100 STC. So you have an airplane, you buy the STC for $100, you can now put that fuel in your airplane. I asked them about experimentals. I said you can't apply an STC to which is a supplemental type certificate, to an airplane that doesn't have a type certificate because it's experimental. He said for experimentals, for the same $100, they will supply a huge packet of information, which is the same information used to develop the STC. So that will be available to the experimental owners. I asked them specifically about resin compatibility, and I said one of the main problems is that there are so many different resins out there that have been used for fuel tanks, and there's many owners of composite experimentals today who are maybe the second and third owner of that airplane. They don't even know what epoxy might have been used to seal the fuel tanks. He said all of the testing that they have done so far on every resin, epoxy resin that they've tested, it has had zero effect on, which is nice to hear. That said, some of the epoxies haven't been around for 20 years. You know, they were manufactured 20 years ago and they're obsolete and they're not made. You can't get them to test anymore. So short of cutting a test card out of your tank and soaking it in some of their fuel for a while, there's no real way of testing. I guess you could just pour some in and cross your fingers and hope. So it's still up in the air. It's kind of a hurry up and wait and see and let other people try it, I guess. I'm eager to have unleaded fuel in my airplane. I want to get rid of the lead. I don't want lead-fouled plugs. I don't want lead-choked valve stems on my Lycoming. I'd love to have a 100-hour oil change interval instead of 50 hours because it's full of lead. That would be wonderful, but I don't want to trash my engine in the process or have my wings melt or start leaking fuel. So we'll, I guess, wait and see. But 2025 is the year for Swift's 100R. Turbotech has a 140 horsepower turbine, or rather turboprop engine, experimental engine that they are selling for $67,000. It's a pretty decent price for a 140 horsepower engine. It does have a heat recuperator in it, so using that, it has the fuel efficiency of pretty close to a equivalent piston engine. I think there may be a market for that, but I would love to see a 200 horsepower engine of that type, maybe at a similar price. I would buy that in a second. If they had a Turbotech engine like that did 200 horsepower and did pretty much the same fuel burn as an IO360, at 200 horsepower, then I would buy that and just skip unleaded avgas altogether. Plus you could then go up high because turbine. Yep, nice. Centauri, this thing's ridiculous. This thing's been around for over 15 years. I think it's longer than that. It was called the Valkyrie, put out by a company called Cobalt 80, I think. I guess they went out of business in 2018 and now this other company has bought it. I looked at this thing and I'm like, there is no way this is gonna fly properly. It's a Canard, but the CG is just bogus. There's no way you can be able to carry more than 2 people in it. And in fact, I have it on good authority from somebody who worked with this company years ago that the thing barely flies with just one test pilot. And he said the first time the test pilot flew it around the pattern, which was just to prove that it could fly to get VC funding, he said that the test pilot said he'd never fly it again. So the guys at the booth there were talking a good game, but it was pretty apparent they had almost zero technical knowledge about the airplane itself. I think it's a pie-in-the-sky dream, great big boondoggle. But it looks pretty cool, doesn't it? I saw this Joby, which was pretty cool, and I kind of just blew it off. I'm like, oh, another one of these VTOL things. But then when I talked to the people there, I thought, this is actually pretty cool. It has 6 rotors, so it can take off vertically. It can lose up to 2 of those and still land safely. And it also has regular flight surfaces, so the rotors can then turn and become pushers, and it will fly. And in that case, if you lose power, it will glide and land like a conventional airplane. I don't know if the utility is there or the market is there, but it is a cool idea. It's pretty small. I don't know what the range is, but I mean, of all the electric things apart from the Bede, this one looks like it's actually feasible. Deltahawk. Deltahawk has their engines on quite a few different airplanes here, including their beautiful twin Velocity.
And here is the Deltahawk booth. They've got an RV14 here with a Deltahawk diesel engine, diesel 2-stroke. No valve train, no cams, very few moving parts. It's turbocharged and supercharged, 180 horsepower. And here is the Deltahawk Velocity. The last time I saw this airplane, it only had one Deltahawk engine in it, and the other one was in the process of being installed. So nice to see that it is now here and flying. Over here we have the Deltahawk SR20 with the standard Deltahawk engine in it. I've actually seen this airplane fly, and it's amazing what this engine sounds like. It sounds like a diesel that is running away, because you don't normally hear diesel engines that are running at the RPM that this thing does. But I really like what Deltahawk is about and what they're doing. So this is a hybrid Deltahawk engine designed for helicopters, and it has the standard Deltahawk turbo supercharged engine on the back, and then it has an additional unit on the front, which is a motor generator that can either generate power or use power to boost output for a given amount of time.
And the idea is that it runs to a battery pack for helicopters so that they have extra power to take off vertically and then once they're in cruise, they can use that motor generator to recharge the batteries, and then once they are coming into land and they need all that extra power again, they can use the power from the batteries in the motor generator to give the rotor system extra energy to land. So that's an interesting idea for the Deltahawk engine. They announced they have new 200 and 235 horsepower engine versions of this on the same block, just by changing bore and stroke and the turbocharger and whatnot. I love the idea and the technology behind this, but I don't love the price, which is, and they're selling it only as a firewall forward kit with engine mount and turbocharger and radiator, all the stuff that you need for $110,000. I'm questioning whether that's a viable price going forward. I desperately want to see Deltahawk succeed. I just don't know if that's going to happen at that price, at least not for a refit. That said, they did announce a deal with Piper where they are going to start producing Seminoles with 2 Deltahawk diesel engines in it. And that's, I mean, I guess that's a good application for it because the Seminoles are primarily multi-trainers. They're going to get a lot of hours, and I guess those engines, they're good on fuel, and they will get the savings back at a faster time because of the reduced fuel burn of those diesel engines. Diamond, I had a look. Absolutely beautiful airplanes and absolutely insane prices. They're twins there, the DA62, and the twins there are so nice. If I had unlimited money, and no, I probably wouldn't buy one, but they're nice looking airplanes. Williams had a pretty small booth there. They just had 2 jet engines sitting in their booth and signs saying do not touch, but they did have the Williams V-Jet out front, which was the forebearer, I believe, to the Cirrus V-Jet. Cessna had a new Sky Courier there in FedEx livery, and it's a giant new cargo airplane, twin turboprop, and it had the back open. You could see where you could actually fit standard cargo pallets into it. Nice looking airplane. Tecnam, I had a look at Tecnam. I love that P2012. The cockpit's really nice. The interior cabin for the passengers is really nice. It carries a lot of passengers, a lot of cargo. I think that is a perfect airplane for a retirement 135 operation in the Caribbean to provide island hopping services. And somewhere in the back of my mind, that's my retirement plan, is to buy one of those and set up that kind of operation down there, which will probably lose money nonstop, but it would be fun. Garmin, I went in and played with all the gadgets.
So this is basically what I'm planning to do in my airplane. I'm going to put the 507 controller in place of the 307. I've already got the 650. This is the audio panel I'm going to put in. This is the G3X Touch, the 10.6, and then the Portrait G3X Touch, and then the G5 backup, which will be replacing my Dynon. So this is basically exactly how I'm going to have my panel set up, except this stack is going to be over here. And as you see, someone has already conveniently changed the airplane into a Canard. And that wasn't me. It was like this when I got here. And if you look at the back of it, I know I don't show this often. Here's the G5 over here. You can see it has its own ADAR, so you have the pitot-static going directly in there along with the CAN bus. And then here's the GSU-25. I already have one of these. This is also the pitot-static. So it's attitude and pitot and static. And then this is the back of the 2 G3X units. Over here we have the autopilot controller. This is the GTN 650. Down here we have, actually, is that a 650? I have a feeling that might be a 375. And then down here is the audio panel. GAD29, you need a GAD29, which is the AirInc 429 interface that allows this IFR certified GPS to talk to everything else. Over here we have what looks like a remote comm. I think they have 2 comms on here, so this is the second comm radio. GSA 28 servos, I have 2 of those. Oh no, here's the remote comm, GTR 205. So what is this one here? This is another comm, so let's have a look and see what this thing here is. And then this is their second comm over here, which is operating that GTR 205 down there. So this is going to be a remote transponder, because you can see over here they have the transponder right here. So there's the transponder, but you obviously don't see one on here. That's because it's right here. So there's the remote transponder. Then the magnetometer, I have a GMU22 rather than 11. I have that temperature probe. Down here we have the GEA24, which is the engine interface. I have one of those. GAD27 I may add, because that adds a lot more inputs, which I am short on. And then they have a backup battery here that's running everything. I don't have that because I built my own. So these GSA 28 autopilot servos have a built-in clutch. Now other servos have a shear pin. As you can see, it's disconnected, so it's completely free. You can move it and it's not going to change anything at all. But if I engage the autopilot, you can hear that clutch engage, and now the autopilots are active. And they are not going to move. And if I then disconnect it, you can hear the clutch release and they can move. So when you're in your Garmin equipped airplane and you turn on the autopilot and that's the sound you hear, that is the clutch inside that servo.
Bede with their electric Arrives. They brought 2 of them to the air show, and they flew one of them in the air show, not every day, but almost every day, which was pretty cool to see. They parked one of them right near Homebuilt Camping, so I got to talk to the people there quite a bit. Got to see it start up and taxi off several times, and I got to have a look at the insides. I talked to the Bede people, and they are so enthusiastic about this airplane. I think this has a future. This thing has a 1,000-pound usable load, and it's only 200 nautical miles on a charge. They have set up a charging infrastructure system throughout the United States at airports, and they are opening up that charging infrastructure for anyone who wants to use it. I think this is perfect for medevac, because if you think about a medevac helicopter, the operational costs of a decent, like an EC-135 twin turbine helicopter, medevac helicopter, is upwards of $10,000 an hour and sometimes more. That's just the helicopter, not including the crew. Of course, that gives you VTOL capability and you can carry a lot in the back, but this is perfect for that application because it has, well, not this one, but they do have one that has a VTOL capability. It's got more than enough range for a standard medevac mission, as long as you're not loitering, which medevac typically doesn't do. And it has a huge area in the back where you could fit 2 stretchers plus personnel back there, 1,000 pounds. Bede Avia is a perfect medevac aircraft, and I think they will find more and more purposes for this thing.
Here's the main entrance, and right as soon as you walk in, huge display from Cessna. They got their Caravan, they got their new Sky Courier. Then over here, all their Cessna 172s, and we have Beechcraft. We got, over here is Cirrus, is Pilatus, and all the big names. There's Gulfstream. And then, of course, over here we have the guy who has the pet hair removal device for sale, just in case, I guess, you have a pet and you need to get rid of the pet hair out of your Gulfstream jet.
Another somewhat questionable booth: alligator, camel, kangaroo, ostrich, just strange meats plus all the bugs you can eat. No, I didn't try this one out. Over to Fightertown, where all the Warbirds are located. So many P-51s. In fact, I think at one point they had 11 P-51s up flying at the same time once during the show.
Well, they're running a Merlin engine over there. We have 4 Corsairs, and then so many Mustangs. P-51s everywhere you look. They're all over the place.
They were towing in a Hellcat that had just arrived, and I noticed that the right main gear wasn't fully extended, so I pointed that out to the owner, and he said, "Thank you so much," and they stopped and made sure that the downlock was working because they did not want that to collapse while they were towing it in. And one of my favorite planes, the P-38 Lightning, they had it all opened up so you could see the engines and the business end, the guns.
There's so many Warbirds here.
These Warbirds, there are some, especially the larger ones, that are owned by museums, but the vast majority of these are owned by private owners, and they're not paid to come to Oshkosh. Oshkosh doesn't even pay for the fuel for if they were going to go up and do the air show. So this is all privately funded. People who just have a genuine love of these old airplanes and put their resources, financial and sweat equity, into keeping them flying. Miller Field is where they set up an enactment of a World War II camp. And they have people set up who are dressed in the uniforms of the day. So they're reenacting a World War II portable or mobile base. It was actually a lot better than just a museum where you see these kinds of tents. When you actually see people in them and they're dressed in the uniforms of the day and they're actually going about their business as if they were there back in World War II, really brings it to life.
Over in the Canard parking, we have actually quite a few Defiants, more than I expected I would see here. And of course, lots of cozies and lots of Velocities, Long Easies. We have quite a few. Actually, I think we have more parked in general aviation, or rather home-built parking, than home-built camping in terms of Canards.
This is the Rutan Solitaire motor glider. I believe this is the only one, at least the only one flying, and this one actually did fly during the air show. You can see the engine sticking up there, but for gliding, that actually retracts into the fuselage.
This is home-built camping. This is where all the home-built airplanes flew into, and they have camped next to the airplanes. It goes over here, and then it goes on and on as far as you can see.
Russ opened up the cowls of his cozy so that people could have a look. We did a little bit of a show and tell, and some people took pictures. Some builders who took pictures who wanted ideas of how they could do the same sort of thing in their cozies.
So here's the main square today. We've got an Airbus from Delta, some kind of Navy cargo plane. We got a 747 there, an F-16, F-22, a T-38, C-130 right there, and then Fifi's a B-29 from World War II. Here we've got a giant drone of some kind. There's a zipline drone. These are the drones that deliver packages by hovering and then dropping down a package on a long line. Here's a electric pipistrel airplane, electric trainer. Here is a de Havilland Vampire. I actually saw this fly in last night, and he did a little bit of a beat up. I've seen many of these fly over the years, and this is a nice one. Usually they're painted black, but this one looks in really nice shape. They have a very distinctive sound with that Whittle jet engine in the back. One of the very first jet engine aircraft. The Harriers are here. This is the last time the Harriers will ever be in an air show. They're being retired, and we're going to get to see them fly.
Ladder for a Harrier? We don't need no stinking ladder. This massive airplane was very popular for the great amount of shade that it cast on the ground right next to the big Garmin booth. Now this is a Privateer, which is a converted B-24 bomber from World War II. The Navy converted these into both cargo and shore patrol. We were able to go for a tour inside.
It's kind of cute.
That's cool.
Nice.
Look at this.
So everything's relatively straightforward. Typical flight instruments, and then 4 of everything for the engines.
No prop sync.
Yep, prop syncs and up. We don't have prop levers. We have those little toggle switches there below the throttles. It went to auction, went to Hawkins and Powers, and was outfitted as a fire bomber and flew actively on fires from the early 70s all the way through the early 2000s. So all of that stuff on the top there was to select which tanks they wanted to drop out of, how much. As far as the layout of like engine instruments and the feather buttons and all that kind of stuff, that's all standard. Those are lights.
You can see here where the top turret used to be when it was still a bomber. This airplane did fly in the air show not long after we actually toured through it, so it was great to be able to see it from the inside and then watch it flying over, knowing exactly what it was as it flew over. Walking into the back area, you can see the large windows cut out for observation use.
Yes, it's raining, and it's very loud.
So we did get one decent rainstorm. It didn't really soak the ground too much. it made a bit of mud and it made the ground a bit soft, but we were pretty fortunate. And of course, it doesn't stop the air show or the show going on, because the show must go on even when it's pouring rain outside. That said, I stayed dry inside my tent, thankfully. Many people were very excited to see the U-2 arrive. It actually flew out of California non-stop here to Wisconsin. It did an overhead brake and circled around to land as it lost speed and altitude. This airplane is capable of flying in excess of 60,000 feet. It is a reconnaissance and spy aircraft that can have a variety of packages that it carries with cameras and sensors and radar and so on. And it can swap out the nose fairly quickly to change those sensors packages that it is carrying. You'll notice it only has 2 landing gear, and they are both in the center line, one tail wheel and one main wheel up underneath the fuselage. It does have a set of wheels that fix partway down alongside the wings so that when it is taking off, it doesn't scrape a wingtip. But it does not have those for landing, because those fall off after it takes off. For landing, he has to balance it on the center line with the center line landing gear, and just by using his ailerons, keep the wings from scraping the ground. Now, the wingtips do have skids on them so that if he does scrape the ground, it doesn't damage it, but he's very, very adept at landing it, and manages not to do that at all. You can see a little bit of a bounce there. You notice it lands tail wheel first. And now he's decelerating and just holding the wingtips off the ground. He does have a chase car that comes along that tells him exactly how high he is, because the visibility flying this thing is pretty terrible, and he's wearing a spacesuit, which makes it even worse. So you can see he's actually just about to stop here, and the wingtip never touches the ground. He manages to keep it balanced all the way to the stop. The OV-10 Bronco is one of my favorite airplanes. The Vietnam-era twin turboprop with those Garrett turboprop engines, short takeoff and landing, close air support, and observation plane. These are all now privately owned, and I think it would be just a fun airplane to own and fly. It's not very often you get to see a B-29 flying overhead. Similarly, you don't see Me-262s flying very often, although this one did not have the original engines in it, obviously, which had a very short lifetime, but was being chased and rousted by a couple of P-51 Mustangs, which was fun to see. The blimps were constantly overhead with their 3 Lycoming engines that could rotate in pretty much any direction, the rear one driving 2 different propellers. The Red Bull helicopter with its rigid rotor system was able to do these types of loops and aerobatics, something that no other helicopter is really capable of doing. Again, another very common sight in World War II, C-47s, or as they're known in the civilian world, DC-3s, flying over in formation. There was quite a few of these DC-3s here, or the C-47s rather. The F-35 flew most of the air shows. It did miss a couple of them because it was down because of maintenance issues, but it was fast and loud, and you could feel it in your chest, especially as it flew a majority of the show in afterburner. I think every time he turned the airplane so that the engine exhaust was facing us, he would intentionally put it in afterburner just so that we would get the full effect of this incredible fighter jet. And with its vector thrust, it can do incredible turns, turning inside practically any other airplane without vector thrust. It would just wipe the map with a conventional fighter. Slow flight, you can see the fly-by-wire manipulating the control surfaces to keep it at that high alpha without stalling. It's basically just sitting on thrust at this point. And of course, let the nose fall into afterburner and just power out of it. He did a high-speed pass, and if you look closely, you can actually see a shock cone starting to form. And then from that high-speed pass, a brutal pull-up. I don't know how many G's he's pulling there, but I wouldn't want to do that. And of course, this airplane has the capability like a Harrier. It will open up its compartments here, and it has a ducted fan in the front driven by the engine. And it can do amazing things like this. Now, we were sitting at the campground watching this, so we didn't see it on the ground, but he actually did just do a vertical landing at the end of this sequence. The F-22 came out and strutted its stuff. You can see the diamonds on the afterburner exhaust here. And look at that pull-up. You can see the vapor off the top of the wings. What these things are capable of doing with vector thrust and the fly-by-wire is just incredible. It's at the limit of human survival in terms of inside the cockpit. And look how fast you can just do a 180 and turn right around like that. Unbelievable. And after the F-22 flew, the F-22 and F-38 did do a sequence together, which was good to see both the airplanes flying together. Lastly, I didn't do much of the night air shows because it's just hard to photograph in video, but I did do the F-35 at night because it just looks so cool. And that is the end of part 2 of my Oshkosh videos. I hope you like what you saw here. I tried to fit in as much as I could without making this a 4-hour video. I just had so much video shot that I could have included, and there was just too much to go through. So I've tried to actually cut the little bits and pieces that I thought were most interesting and included them in this video. I know I won't be able to satisfy everybody. Some people want to see more air shows. Some people want to see more static exhibits. Some people wanted to see more vendors. I have so much of all of it, and I honestly didn't know what to include, so I tried to do my best and just pick the best of the best. I know there's stuff I missed. I really didn't want to go and interview people for this video. I thought I really want to experience Oshkosh and see the sights for myself rather than focusing on making video content. And if I had gone in and started interviewing vendors on camera, I think that would have definitely changed that. Plus, the fact that I was not recording when I talked to various vendors, I think they opened up quite a bit more to me and gave me more information than they would have if they were speaking on camera in an official role for the company. So I think there's that. Maybe next year I'll do something a little bit different and I'll actually do some interviews of people on camera. We'll see. I know that I am planning to go again next year because I just loved every single day that I was here. The next video in this series is obviously going to be the departure from Oshkosh and the flight home, which itself was fairly interesting, so tune in for that. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please leave in the comment section below. And if you do like this video, this video took me hours and hours and hours to edit. If you appreciate that, please click like on the video. And if you want to see more stuff like this, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. It really helps me out. Thanks for watching.